4th, we have a certification workshop that will be co-hosted with the South Carolina Manufacturing Extension Partnership. This is a training style workshop that will last all morning. We'll have a number of speakers coming in from SCMEP, from the Performance Review Institute, from the Department of Commerce, as well as a supplier manager from Lockheed Martin. And they'll be discussing the process to get certified and in different types of certification in the aerospace industry, as well as Lockheed Martin's supplier certification process, and what help as well the Commerce Department can provide. This is a great opportunity to learn more about the certifications that are in the aerospace industry. And it's also a great opportunity to introduce perhaps some of your newer employees. I know I can say that having worked for GE Aviation myself, training like this would have been great when I first started for me as a quality engineer or as a manufacturing leader. So don't just think of it as something you can tune into. If you have people that you work with in your plants or in your factories, please forward this to anybody that is interested, because we think it's going to be very, very beneficial to learn about these different certifications and the process for going and achieving them. Then on April 18th, we'll have our SC Aerospace networking event. This is the same thing that we did last year at the same time. It'll be the night before the Tech Talk, and I apologize for the typo there. It's Tech Talk 2022, but that'll be at Trident Tech like it was last year at the South Carolina Aeronautical Training Center. We'll have a small networking reception to get everybody out and talking and see who's in town for Tech Talk the next night or the next day, and then again the next day we'll be at Tech Talk hosted by SC Logistics, and there's a great lineup of speakers that we'll have for that as well. So those are our events, but of course, as always, our events are not made possible but for the support from our partners. So just so everybody knows, this is the list of our partners, and as always, we thank them again for their support because they make what we do possible. Before I hand it over to Megan, I just want to remind everybody that today's presentation will be recorded, and we will be posting it to the South Carolina Council on Competitiveness YouTube channel shortly after. But without further ado, I'm going to stop sharing my screen. I'm going to hand it over to Megan from Charleston Regional Development Alliance. Megan?
Thank you, Stephen. Good morning, everybody. Well, thank you again for inviting me to speak with you all today. You know, with these unprecedented times, and I hate that catchphrase, but with what's going on, it's really difficult to talk through kind of what the aerospace environment and landscape looks like within the Charleston region. And so if we had done this 3 years ago, and hopefully maybe in a year, things would look very different, because none of us have been able to predict anything that's going to happen within any industry, much less within, you know, the next week or so. So what I thought would be interesting is talking through a little bit about what we're doing in the region, and the region being Charleston, Berkeley, Dorchester counties, to remain competitive, and what we focus on, how we spend our time beyond aerospace within other industries, what our pipeline looks like, and some creative initiatives that we have going on, in hopes that this is going to keep us relevant to other aerospace companies or companies in general that are considering a new location. So Charleston Regional Development Alliance, we work to really recruit talent companies and entrepreneurs to the region in hopes that we're going to bring the region up to economic parity with the rest of the country. And we do that through a variety of ways, of which I'm going to talk through. To give you a little idea about our market as a whole, South Carolina as a state is growing rapidly. We're one of the top 10 growing states in the country by inbound moves, and the Charleston region is outpacing the state growth. We're growing at a 2.3% average growth rate. We expect we'll be over 1 million people by 2031. I think it'll be sooner than that. But this is an interesting slide because a lot of times people assume that this growth has occurred overnight, and people have just, flooded in here from everywhere else, and it's happened really rapidly. But as you can see, it's been very steady and average growth over the past 20 years. Another huge asset that we've got in the region, and of course this is a state asset and a southeastern regional asset, is the port. And again, I'm talking through some things that really are drivers for our economy. So while it's not necessarily impacting aerospace or things that other companies that come into the region, the port is the biggest economic driver in the state, and because of them, we get a lot of people looking within the region and within the state. So it's definitely a huge partnership that we can't ignore, especially given how much they're growing. In fact, they just moved into the 8th largest maritime hub after their cargo growth that they've experienced. And they're investing a lot of money in growing the port capacity. They just brought a new terminal on, which is the first one that was permitted in the past 10 years. And there's no other terminal that will come on in the next 10 years. And so they're going to effectively double their capacity in the next 20 years. Another big component of being competitive and remaining competitive is keeping in line with academia and industry needs. And so something that's occurred in the region within our university system is a lot more engineering focused and a lot more STEM focused. So Clemson, of course, Citadel's the oldest engineering school in the state. The Clemson campus here, they all now have engineering degrees offered and are growing their engineering enrollment, which we'll talk a little bit about employment gaps in a minute. But engineering obviously is one of the biggest ones. It's not just a Charleston or South Carolina issue, it's nationwide. And then we have the Aeronautical Training Center, which I'm sure most of you are familiar with. If you're not, I highly encourage you to go visit. It's truly an amazing asset that the whole state has access to. And it's fascinating to see when you take prospects through the facility, how their eyes get very wide, and they often comment on the caliber and the quality of what's being done there, and that they're not seeing it done anywhere else, not just in their facilities, but rarely anywhere else, all together in one place. And so again, huge driver for our business recruitment and economy. So right now, our labor force, we're about a 400,000 person labor force. Interestingly, we have rebounded. We're about 5,000 people larger now than we were pre-COVID. It's interesting with a lot of the workforce analytics, kind of the great reshuffle, resignation, whatever you want to look at, but we've rebounded and actually added people to the labor force, which is quite interesting. But we are within the prime age for employment, 83.5%. And again, this is who's currently in Charleston, the Charleston market. 83.5% are within that prime working age. Our labor force is growing much faster than the rest of the country. So as far as who's currently here, we're looking pretty good. Our unemployment rate is, as a region, is 2.9%, which is really low. However, I realize that we're not in the worst case scenario right now. I was speaking with someone yesterday from Lincoln, Nebraska. He asked me about unemployment, and I hesitated for a moment, and he said, well, ours is at 1.9%. So if you can give me anything better than that, you're good. So that made me feel a little bit better. I was trying to do my sales dance a little bit about kind of not disclosing it was so low, but it's much lower there. So I guess it's a nationwide problem, nothing we're dealing with exclusively. Now, the incoming labor force, these are people that are moving to Charleston. We have about 33 net new people a day. The 5-year rolling average is about 31, but it's increased to 33. We did see some accelerated inbound moves during COVID when people were getting more access to remote work and could choose to work wherever they wanted. A lot of people wanted to come and live and work in Charleston. We don't know how that's going to impact where people are going to go, excuse me, if they move after COVID, but what the data is telling us is a lot of people are choosing to remain. The incoming labor pool has a high level of education. And so when we're looking at projects and looking at their qualifiers, it's always good to see a higher level of education for Charleston area residents, and still keeping in trend with the critical age group of 18 to 54. People always assume you're at the beach, you're a retirement community, but that's clearly not the case. Now the next slide is something that's always fun to look at. It's going to talk about where people are coming from, and I want you to think in your head where maybe you believe Ohio may fall on this list, because that's always where people assume everyone is coming from. But interestingly enough, they're not in the top 10 metros, and they're not in the top 10 states of inbound moves to Charleston. And this is, they actually haven't been for the past several years. So this is not just COVID focused, even though New York and New Jersey did jump up to one of the top spots during COVID. We've seen a lot of people coming in. And if you look at the column on the right, the net migration, it's no surprise when you have 467 people a day moving out of New York and the New Jersey area. But the thing that sometimes people, it's a lot of people coming in to a small market, but having inbound moves is pretty critical in our continued success. A lot of times people don't realize that a market that's under 1 million people does not get the same competitive considerations for new projects that other markets are going to get. And so even though we're not there yet, we're tracking towards it, and we can at least show the steady growth and show the story. And so that continues to get us good projects and high level projects with higher paying wages that are really what we're looking for. And not to mention South Carolina really, I guess in 2020, the deaths outnumbered the births, not to be morbid, but for the first time ever, I believe. So really getting people here, recruiting people here, getting people to continue to move here is something that we're focusing on within our region and our agency. Okay, business development. What we're doing to recruit companies, how we're doing this. Kind of want to talk a little bit about our pipeline so you guys understand the whys behind how we do and what we do. There's 5 high impact clusters that we focus on within the region. Now, keep in mind, these are not going to be the exact same for each individual county, but looking at data and trends, these are the clusters that we believe have the biggest multiplier effects that are bringing the supply chain into the region. So aerospace, obviously, I think that's pretty much a given here. Automotive is also critical to our infrastructure, with Volvo and Mercedes both having OEM plants within the region. Life sciences, it's the fastest growing cluster within the region. I would dare say it's probably one of the fastest growing clusters within the southeastern United States. It's great that we have MUSC to be an anchor to some of the life sciences growth, and we're excited to see where that's going. Information technology is a great sector because it's had a lot of organic growth that's got a lot of people's attention in the larger markets such as San Francisco, Austin, and Nashville. And so we're starting to be, the Charleston region is really starting to come into the same conversations as companies that are looking in those areas. And then advanced logistics. This doesn't necessarily include warehousing and distribution, but it's more of third-party logistics companies, but knowing that having the port in our backyard and the great accessibility, great rail, great infrastructure, and interstates, logistics are always going to be a critical part of our economy. People often ask how we do what we do, and there is a method to the madness. There's a lot of time and effort spent determining how we want to spend our time and resources. We do travel a lot and attend trade shows that are typically associated with our target industry clusters. Unfortunately, we've not been able to travel as much as we'd like to. I did get to jump across the border to Montreal. I guess it was last year at the end, maybe last fall, for Aeromart. We attend Medica in Germany. My boss Mike went to that in November. He actually has gone back to Germany about 2 weeks ago for a geographic based mission. And then looking forward to our calendar year, we have another trip to Germany, maybe to the UK, one to the Netherlands, and one to Japan, one to Korea. And those are geographic based missions. So really, we just go to the geography. We have preset appointments. It's not going to be specifically focused on a certain industry, even though we can, with Germany, the UK, and Netherlands, those are trips set up by lead generation companies that we contract with in those geographies. So we can tell them that we'd like to focus on this type of company, this size company, this industry, and they'll work to set that up as much as they can, supplementing with other meetings that they can get. And then we do attend a lot of industry focused trade shows. So ADSS in Seattle coming up, I believe in April. Of course, Farnborough. I'm very excited to get back to the air show. It's been 3 or 4 years since I've been able to do that. I think the last one I was on, I guess Adrian was with me, and that was always a good time and lots of work, but just one of the best shows that South Carolina supports and participates in. And then a few other industry-based trade shows. So project activity, we really had to, as everybody did, had to work hard to stay engaged with companies. And so we kept kicking the can a little bit, thinking that virtual was gonna go away, and it really didn't. And I don't think it's going to, and I think that's a good thing. It really helps us to be more efficient, especially with our international friends. But we continued doing a lot of virtual meetings, and they've been very fruitful. We hosted in the last quarter, we hosted 13 companies, which it's actually oftentimes hosting them multiple times. And so, and when we host them, it can be for half a day or it can be for 3 days. And so every project is different, every company is different, every scope of the project is different. And then to date, we've done 133 company meetings. And while it's below our average pre-pandemic, which was 250, it's above 2021, which was only 114, and we've already conducted 133. So we're on track to stay busy, and we've got a great diverse group of companies that are showing interest in the region. We also do things that are a little outside of the box, such as hosting international delegations that want to come in from, and maybe they'll be, again, industry focused or just from a certain geography. So we had a group of Spanish companies coming in to look at for business opportunities. Sometimes they're looking to do their own business development. We understand that, but oftentimes they're looking at the market to see if they do put a new facility somewhere in the US, where would they want to put it, what makes sense to them. And so it's always important to stay in touch with these delegations, these trade agencies and multipliers. So whenever they think of a location in the US, they hopefully think of the state and Charleston region. In December, we hosted a member of Parliament, Penny Mordaunt, from the Minister of State for the UK. She focuses now on trade, but she has a big background in defense. And so she brought some interesting perspective. And she's also discussing sustainability, which is something that we're seeing more and more, and I'll talk a little bit about here in a minute. Here's our project pipeline activity. People are typically interested to see what kind of projects we have, how many activities increased dramatically. Landing pad projects are international companies that are looking to put their first facility in the US. They're often very small, 2 or 3 people. It could be an engineer and a salesperson, 2 salespeople, whatever it is. The reason we do talk about these and celebrate them is because they take a lot of time, as you can imagine. There's a lot of things to walk through with a brand new US location, but also often they end up being larger operations, whether it's manufacturing or research and development, whatever it is. So The hope is that getting them into market will help them, as long, if we can help them be successful, they're going to want to continue to grow within the market. Unfortunately, as you can see on my chart to the right, aerospace has not been the most giving of our industries, but that's not surprising. I will say in the past 3 weeks, I've had 3 new aerospace inquiries, which has made me more excited than anybody should be about these types of things. But 2 of them have been focused on identifying a hangar. So that's, again, something I'll talk about in a minute. And one is a parts manufacturer. It looks like an incredible project. They already have a U.S. location on the West Coast and need to expand. And so it's could be about 200 jobs and really good paying jobs. So I'm pretty excited about that one. So that's a little bit of encouragement, given I've had 3 inquiries in the past month. That's on par with what we've seen in the past year. But otherwise, you can see where things are going, where the growth is occurring. The miscellaneous category, I don't like saying just miscellaneous, but that's a catch-all for everything else that's not our high impact cluster. So that could be food and beverage, which we've seen an uptick on. It could be just general advanced manufacturing that's not tied to a specific industry cluster. It could be metal fabrication. We've got a lot of metal industry within the region. So anything that doesn't fall within our high impact clusters is put under the miscellaneous category. Excuse me. And then the average size of the active projects. This is a small sampling because we don't always get this information, but I did look back over the entire pipeline and average it out. And you can see what we're working with. And the interesting thing is the average number of jobs is very high compared to what we are used to seeing. We've got a few projects out there that are over 1,000 new jobs that they're looking to create. And I would say traditionally, under 100 would be what we would consider average. Anything over 100 is like, wow, that's a good project. And then the investment's the same. With our average coming in over 100 million, that's unbelievable. And this does include what we had for the landing pads and for the office projects, which are typically under $2 million. So got some big whales, as we call them, out there. We'll see what happens. Oftentimes these things take years to really pan out, but it's interesting how quickly this trend has changed from smaller to this type of project. So workforce and talent development. This is an interesting thing that our agency does that I don't think a lot of regional development alliances that are focused on economic development really work towards. Obviously, everybody does tout workforce development and all the tools they have in their toolbox. I'm sure many of you are familiar with Ready SC, which is great because it's a free service to new companies or expanding companies to help train their workforce. Companies are eligible as long as they're adding at least 10 jobs and must be paying competitive wages. The apprenticeship program is really fantastic. It's modeled after the German apprenticeship, and we have regular apprenticeships and also youth apprenticeships that start at the high school level and can help kids get familiar with a skill and get certifications. Career academies is a really interesting and cool concept that came out of our Charleston career guide, or I'm sorry, not the career guide, our talent and demand study. So about every 5 years, we do a big, between the CRDA, the Charleston Metro, and other groups do a big push out to industry, asking them, surveying them on where the gaps are, where they expect to see that they're going to have need and demand in different types of jobs. And they gather all the information, and that's some part of what we use for our talent recruitment, but it also spurred out the career academies. So what the career academies do, they essentially let students really experience the high demand industries and start gaining those skill sets. So it's getting them familiar with all the jobs and the skills that industry are telling us right now that they either need or they're going to need. So we've got 22 high schools participating with 14,000 students enrolled in career academies. And there's about 60 academies focusing business, IT, health, construction. There's about 30% of it is STEM focused. And then there's hospitality, culinary, and the arts as well. All right, so the talent recruitment and targeted ads. Again, when we started realizing that there are a lot of gaps that our companies in market need from a talent perspective, we put our heads together and thought that we know where these people are living. We can find the information, we can find the data. What can we do that's compelling enough to say, hey, come and move to Charleston. There's a job that you can find here that's going to fit your skill set. Keep in mind that these are going to be people that are the white collar careers. These are not going to be some of the in-demand things like welders. It may be, but probably not the CNC machinists, maybe not the truck drivers. But let's take engineering, for example, because that is, again, a nationwide gap. So we said, all right, where are the engineers right now? Where do they live? Let's kind of look at that from a broad stroke, and then whittling it down a little bit more to, all right, where do we know people have familiarity with Charleston? Where are they moving from? Looking at the metros in the states, and then whittling it down even further to say, okay, well, where are the markets that are higher cost of living, higher price markets than the Charleston region? And that's where we want to target. And so these are some examples of targeted ads that we push out. And here's an example of some of the markets that we are pushing out to. So let's say if we needed some biomedical or life science focused people, we realize the Raleigh-Durham area, while rich in those occupations, is not going to be a lower cost market than what Charleston is. And so we don't necessarily spend our resources marketing to the Research Triangle, but we are going to spend our resources pushing things out in Boston, in Hartford, Minneapolis. I've had several questions that people say, well, everything seems pretty concentrated in certain areas, why these areas? And so I go through the reasoning, but honestly, a big part of it too is pushing out ads during the winter. You'd be amazed how compelling it can be to show somebody a beach when they're sitting in Minneapolis and it's -10 and the wind is blowing and snow's piling up everywhere. And we say, hey, come to Charleston, you can golf year round and the weather's amazing. So we do get a lot of activity and driven to the websites during the winter months and a lot of these Northeastern and Midwest markets. But it's really just being strategic about how we target people and looking at the gaps and where we can pull people from in a way that makes sense. The in-demand occupations we've identified, I didn't mention that the talent demand study, it comes out every 5 years. We're undergoing one right now. So we'll have a new one that we will be publishing soon. I don't think much of this will necessarily change, especially the engineering focus, but it'll be interesting to see what companies are saying, especially coming off of everybody's having to adjust during the pandemic and what it takes to retain having such a tight labor market in terms of benefits, in terms of salary and things like that. And so looking at what we need and looking forward, I think we're pretty excited to see how that all shakes out. So looking forward, as mentioned, we want to stay as competitive as we can. We're working hard to stay in front of trends and to know what we need to do to, as past Secretary of Commerce Bobby Hitt would say, set the table to be prepared to recruit and to win. Some sectors that we see growth in specifically for our market, you can see here, I will say that electric vehicles, anything to do with electrification is 100% the hottest thing we've got going right now. It came fast and furious. we were already getting inklings and ideas that it was coming. I mean, obviously with Volvo committing to be all electric, and then Daimler deciding to put their North American electric e-Sprinter, or their e-Sprinter manufacturing in North Charleston. So we knew it was coming, but then it's just been a mad rush. And it's interesting because while it is automotive related, it's very, very different, very unique, because it's everything that is involved with electrification, including the software, the hardware, the charging stations to the electrical components. So things that we didn't have to think about with traditional automotive, such as the grid and infrastructure, it's all included. And so we've been doing a quick course of education on that, along with a lot of our partners, like Council on Competitiveness, working towards making sure that we're staying competitive within that arena. And then life sciences and bio, that's been on the uptick. Last mile distribution, that's of course a direct result of consumer goods, or consumers changing the way they purchase goods, and changing the things we buy online. So I wouldn't have ever imagined buying a mattress in a box 3 years ago, but lo and behold, I have 2 that are on the way to my house right now. So looking at how we purchase things, so last mile distribution, being close to a port, being within a growing population center, that's not going to go anywhere anytime soon either. Some of the initiatives that we're working on, one I've always been really passionate about is trying to get our arms around how to talk to companies about joint ventures, mergers, and acquisitions. Going to so many air shows over the years, meeting with companies, especially international companies. As we all know, in the aerospace world, getting into a new market, you need a contract, and you need your certifications. And a lot of companies don't have the capital to go just on a leap of faith, go into a new market without those things. And so there's a chicken and egg situation where they want to enter in through joint ventures or partnerships. And there's interest in being in our market, but we never had the tool to connect the companies with potential partners. It's just not something that we knew how to do or had the bandwidth to take on. So in 2018, a few regional areas within the state, Charleston being one, started working towards, and these were all done independently, not the same way, but started working towards trying to figure out how we could help these companies that wanted to be here, but wanted to come in through not a greenfield way. So there's a M&A council. It's something that we really don't use that much. I think aerospace is going to be the industry that uses it the most, but we have kind of layers of people that we push things down through confidentially, and in hopes that the members are people that are attorneys, accountants, people that have connections with companies that they may know would be interested in these types of partnerships. And so we kind of do a lot of layers so there's no confidentiality breach, and push it out into the market in hopes that we'll be able to identify somebody. My dream would be that this would be a statewide initiative, because admittedly, I represent a small region, and if a company wants to be here and I can't help them, I want them to be in the state no matter what. But that's going to be a very big and tough nut to crack. The deal community, we realized right about a couple of years before COVID, that there's a lot of capital that's within our region, and a lot of people that want to invest in new companies, new ventures, new technologies, but they didn't know what was happening here. And so that money was flowing out. And so the deal community, or the Charleston Deal Alliance, was created to bring together people that with venture capital, with any type of interest in investing, bring those people together to form a group that want to invest within the community. And so when we have startups, when we have new technologies from out of market or growing within, we're able to connect them with the Deal Alliance, in hopes that they'll be able to find a partner here, which maybe would encourage them to be here, and also keeps that capital flowing through the Charleston community. The Global Fluency Initiative, that's something that we realize we're not great at even though we have great experience in working with international companies, we're not necessarily great about making them feel like they can thrive here necessarily, when we have a lot of expats or people that are relocating from all over the world and have to spend time here. And so we want to do everything we can to make people as comfortable being here, and understanding that there's a lot of things that we could do better in that regard. And so this is the 5-year priority issues, and this is about 5 years old. This is something that we're going to continue working on, because the global attraction to Charleston and the state of South Carolina is not going to go away anytime soon. And then a few opportunities, working more with our partners to identify the assets and product we have for companies, just because aerospace defense companies are usually pretty unique in their site needs. Airport access is something that, or runway access, it's not obviously every company, but when it does come up, it's difficult sometimes to get our arms around what we have available and what we can actually submit to a company. So I think working more with our partners and understanding what's out there, encouraging people to let us know when a hangar is available, or whatever that may be, because that can be a real game changer when you catch wind of a project and they need a 5,000 square foot hangar, and saying, hey, we got something for you, at least to catch their attention. Sustainability is a competitive advantage that we're seeing more companies are using as a qualifier in their site selection process. And it's becoming a check mark. Like, what are you doing to promote sustainability? How are you doing that as a community? What companies in your area are doing this? So we're working hard to understand what other people are doing, what companies are doing, what the communities are doing. And we have a portal on our webpage. Again, this was something that happened pretty recently, and we pulled together quickly so companies can see that it's been done in our community. We're very passionate about it, but we weren't promoting it before. And sometimes you lose projects on reasons you don't realize. So when we heard this, we pulled a lot of information together, and we're still working hard on that. We've realized that diversity, equity, inclusion falls under sustainability. And we've had a lot of questions from our companies on how they can make their supply chains diverse and reflective of their employees, their customers, whatever it is that whoever it is that they touch, they want their supply chains and the owners of companies to reflect that. And so we have a lot of companies asking, well, who's doing this well? Who's got a diverse supply chain? How do they do it? And we haven't come up with an answer yet. And so that's something that we're working on with companies, saying, hey, what's your, how are you handling this? How do you ensure that your supply chain is diverse? And if you have a good solution, can we share that with the Volvos or Mercedes or whomever that wants to know more about it? And then working with companies such as a lot of you on the call on where are the gaps in the companies or the processes or the types of products that you need to be successful, and understanding that for aerospace supply chain it's not a Charleston region issue. It's not even a state issue. It's a Southeastern regional discussion. And so when we kind of take out the borders and look at North Carolina and Georgia as assets to this supply chain discussion, and looking at, I wouldn't share this with them, but looking at where there may be gaps and using that as a more targeted approach, and really engaging more with companies such as a lot of you on what you think we should be doing to remain competitive, be more competitive, and what we need to be recruiting for you guys to ensure that you stay robust. And of course, we've worked very closely with Stephen and SC Aerospace and Council on Competitiveness, because they really are the ones boots on the ground that are talking with you guys day in and day out and hearing these conversations. And so we don't know what we don't know. And so we always encourage and welcome you guys to reach out, whether it's to us or your own regional development alliance or county economic development team or the State Department of Commerce, whenever you see these opportunities, because that's what we're here for. And we want to do everything we can to ensure that the existing companies remain healthy and grow. And with that, I will end.
Thank you very much, Megan. That was incredible. And it's very exciting to hear everything that you have going on, and especially to see how your organization and our organization partner together to really promote the industry, and as well as to hear about the other industries that are important to your region and to the state. We do have time to take the questions. We haven't seen any come up in the chat box yet. So if anybody does have a question, feel free to put it in the chat box, or if you want to unmute yourself, you can. But while we're thinking about questions here, I would just like to direct everybody to the chat box as well. Alex posted the Eventbrite registration for our certification workshop. So if you're looking to sign up for that, you can go there. And as well, Elliot DeMerrill posted information about a tour of the South Carolina Aeronautical Training Center. And so if anybody's interested in that, please find that email and phone number there. But with that, if anybody has a question, feel free to put it in the chat box and I can bring it up, or if you just want to mute yourself, we have about 10 minutes left. Again, I think you're going to get off the hook today. I don't think there's going to be any.
Yeah, that's always, it's either I just covered it so well, or everybody fell asleep. So I'm gonna choose to go with the first option there.
No, I think it's definitely that you covered it well.
Hey, Megan, this is Ron LeBlanc. Excellent presentation. Thank you very much. I'd like to follow up with you. I might have some ideas on some of these things you talked about within aerospace, and also auto and EV. So maybe I'll follow up with you in the next couple of days.
Yes, please do. And I guess my contact information, Stephen, is that out there, or should I put it in the chat box?
We can put it out in a follow-up email. But if you want to type in the chat box, feel free. But when we follow up on this, we'll be sure to put it in there for anyone that wants to get in touch with you.
Fantastic. Thank you so much. And thank you, Ron.
We did have a question come in from Vanessa Goschel. She was asking if activity you're seeing in passenger versus car in aviation. I was wondering if you have any insight into that for the region.
Hi, Vanessa. I actually don't. I don't know that. Stephen, you guys may know it more than I do. I haven't really been tracking that very much. We haven't been as involved in. We've had some conversations just regarding around the cargo activity, but not as it relates to a comparison between passenger and cargo. I will say that the other project I got in recently is cargo related, so upfit for planes that are being overhauled. So I know that that's something that's growing within the aerospace market. But no, I don't, Vanessa, but I'd be happy to find out for you.
Yeah, Vanessa, I can follow up with you as well. One of our advisors to SC Aerospace, Steve Towns, who leads Ranger Aerospace and ACL Air Shop, is very knowledgeable on that subject in particular, given the work that ACL Air Shop does. And we have seen a large increase in cargo shipping via air since March of 2020. And we last year hosted a webinar with GSP Airport, kind of talking on this topic as well. So I'll follow up with you with a few links and contacts that I think would be helpful.
Yeah, and this is Susie Shannon. I just want to mention too, Now, this is sort of on the other side of the state with GSP. The operator there, Dave Edwards, serves on our SE Logistics Cluster Advisory Board. And what we're hearing, particularly on the upstate side of the state, is a lot of these 3PLs and carriers and support infrastructure have moved from sort of the normal kind of Monday through Friday 9 to 5 to basically 24/7 operations. And that really hasn't let up given the uptick in e-commerce.
Well, anybody else? This will be the last call for questions. All right, well, it seems no more questions. I will point everybody in the chat box one more time. Susie just posted a link for general info on employment and cargo, so please check that out if you're interested. But with that, we just want to thank Megan Anderson and the entire CRDA team again for this wonderful presentation, and as always for their generous support of SC Aerospace. It's really a treat for SC Aerospace to not just partner with our big OEMs and our tier ones, but also to partner with our regional economic development groups like CRDA or like Upstate SC Alliance. It really just helps to build the whole Team SC concept, and we thank you, Megan, again for this presentation. And with that, I'll say everybody have a great Wednesday and stay out of the rain. Thanks, everyone.
Thank you.
Thank you.